Where Did the Road Go is brought to you in part by our Patreons. This month in particular is being sponsored by Eric Hervin, Super Inframan, Allison Cook, and Lindsay Marie Trebet. If you would like to become a Patreon, get extra content, and help this show grow, you can do so at wheredidtheroadgo.com. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight, I have no idea if you want to be called Bill or Will.
You could call me Bill Seriah. That'd be fine.
All right. Bill Sheehan is with us and returning. It was about a year ago you were on before. And talking about some weird Bigfoot stories you've collected in your books. And what are the books called?
The collection is called Bigfoot, Terror in the Woods, Sightings, and Encounters. And that's available, really, if you just go to buybigfootbooks.com. I have them in ebook, paperback, and I've spent the past 6 or 7 months putting about 5 of them on audiobook now.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, I've been a busy bee, and I've been writing, doing some more writing in the interim. And as you know, we just started up this podcast by the same name. So I've been pretty busy, Seriah.
And the podcast, I assume, is in normal podcast channels?
Yeah, I mean, everyone I've told about it has no problem pulling it up with whatever they have at their disposal. But, you know, it's Bigfoot, Terror in the Woods, Sightings, and Encounters podcast. I use a podcast app on my iPhone, and it comes right up by typing it in, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. I don't think anybody would have any issue pulling that up.
And how long have you been doing the podcast?
Well, we started in I think May.
Okay.
And you know something, Seriah? This has been one heck of a ride for me because I initially started with an interest in Bigfoot and having done some writing, and one thing led to another, boy, and I'm telling you, this is just a snowball ride for me because I went from telling all the young people around me who were saying, well, if you're going to write, you're probably going to do ebooks, and if you're going to do ebooks, you probably end up doing audiobooks. And I was like, listen, people, I get it, but I'm an old guy, and I think I'll just stick to writing paperbacks. I'll tell you, one thing led to another, and a door opens, and somebody comes into my life, and now it's my brother. My brother's my co-host on the podcast. Who would have thunk? And he said to me one day, Bill, I can't believe the success you're having with these books. He said, and this is the God's honest truth, Seriah. He said to me, when I heard you talking about writing about Bigfoot, he said, I thought you were going to fall flat on your face. And the people were going to, think it was a load of malarkey and this and that. And I was like, well, that's why I'm a believer and you are not. and that's the truth of it. But, now my brother is like my worldly beat reporter. And he's digging up info on sightings and encounters. And a lot of stuff is coming through to me now. By people who have read the books, who are listening to the podcast, and I'm encouraging people to come forth. If you've seen something, say something. That's the terminology I use.
Yeah. And
I'm telling you, there are people out there that are seeing things, and they're grateful to have an outlet. Now, I do my best, Seriah, to try to screen people in my own way. Now, you may say, how do you do that? Well, part of it's just like intuition, a gut feeling. I will pose questions to certain people who say they do thus, and so for a living or whatnot. Questions that they should be readily able to answer, if they are who they say they are.
Right.
And yeah, I kind of do a little baiting here and there. And I don't mean to sound like I'm trying to trick anybody, but I'm just trying to get to the bottom of, in some way, shape, or form, people telling the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
And the reality is, Seriah, if I'm not there seeing the Bigfoot for myself, and if I doubted everybody, then I'd be no different than most of the people who are non-believers in the creature out there, wouldn't I?
Right.
I mean, is everybody a liar? I don't think so.
No, and I fall in that category, too, where I feel like I'd rather, as I've said before, I'd rather believe someone who is lying than not believe someone that's telling the truth.
Well, that's interesting. Yep. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And Kevin, my brother, and I were talking the other day, having wrapped up a podcast, and I said to him, Kev, what do you make of the descriptions of Bigfoot as far as weight? We hear people say the creature had to be all of 500 pounds. Somebody else will say 2,000 pounds. And I said to him, really what we're talking about here is people who have cited something so far out of the normal realm as far as looking at other human beings and animals that they know of, that they're just throwing a number out there, in my opinion. Just trying to describe something that is so surreal or unreal that they really don't know how to label it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had people say it was as big as a barn door. Now, a barn door, I mean, I don't have a barn. I've never had a barn. But to me, a barn door is like a sheet of plywood. In my mind, I'm thinking two sheets of plywood hinged and framed, and they close together, making a big opening into a large barn. But if you think about encountering a monster the size of a sheet of plywood with legs and arms and a head, I mean, that's intimidating, my friend. That is intimidating.
Absolutely.
So, and Kevin was up in Alaska a few weeks ago trout fishing, and he went to this encampment that was under armed guard 24 hours a day out in the woods. They were flown in by bush plane to some creek where the grizzlies were actively feeding. And he told me that they were fishing 15 or 20 feet away from numerous large brown bears, Kodiak bears, grizzlies. They all go by the same name. And I said to him, "Are you out of your mind?" And he said the guard who was with them had a sawed-off pump-action shotgun, and he had said in the 7 years he had been coming there that he never had to chamber a round. And I said, I don't want to be there when the first is being chambered.
Yeah.
But the reason I even mentioned this was, now these are called brown bears, Kodiak bears, grizzlies, all the same, describing the same creature. But he said as he looked out over this bear population, there were blonde-colored or wheat-colored bears, red or rust-colored, black, chocolate-colored, all the same species. And it really got me to thinking about, when we talk about people trying to describe the size, well, how about when people say, the one I saw looked like it was black and white or gray. Mm-hmm. Some people describe it as blonde.
Yeah.
I hear red, maroon, and auburn over and over again. Black, dark brown. Maybe it's the same with them.
Sure.
As it is with, say, these grizzlies or Kodiaks. That we're seeing the same creature, and the descriptions vary based on where you are and obviously what you saw. If I see a blonde-colored grizzly bear, well, that's what I saw. I'm not going to tell you it was brown. It was blonde-colored,
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Just the scope, the broad scope of the encounters that people are having out there. But one thing is for certain, Seriah, the more I hear and the more I listen to, the more it is proof positive to me that people are seeing the same thing and that these creatures are, in fact, creatures of habit. They are seen in similar ways, doing similar things, acting in similar fashions by the vast majority of people who are either having a sighting or what I would call a full-on encounter, where you're kind of in close quarters with this thing, rather than seeing it, walking across a field a few hundred yards away, So it's quite interesting and, ultimately terrifying, in my opinion, to come in close quarters with a creature such as this. It's just it's not something like people say to me all the time. Oh, don't you want to see one? Well, maybe from afar. But I certainly don't want one getting the jump on me because I stand by my guns when I say if you see Bigfoot and get away, you had a very good day. Because I believe that these creatures are, in my opinion, similar to, say, a dog, where some dogs may be a nice little lap dog or kind and come over to you to get a drink of water that you're offering or a piece of food, and the next dog will run after you across the street to come and bite you.
True.
Yeah, I'm who's to say? If they are, in fact, an animal, and I believe the majority of them are, I do, in fact, believe that a certain amount of these sightings are representative of the demonic realm. But for the most part, I think we're dealing with a flesh and blood entity, and then we're dealing with some other sightings that, in my opinion, are a mimicking of what is real by the demonic. We could talk about that if you want to, but
sure.
I think there are two different things going on here, and relative to the flesh and blood ones, I believe they're subject to a lot of things just as humans are, just as other animals are. Some are more docile, some are more vicious, some are more aggressive, some will run from you rather than running to you. In my heart, that's what I believe.
Now, why do you say demonic?
Well, there's a number of reasons. First of all, the types of sightings to me are indicative of the demonic when I cross that realm. And I'll just give you a couple of ideas because we could talk for a day about that. But the idea, to me, I have an encounter. It's actually one that I hadn't planned to do with you today, but we can talk about it. Two fellas were rat racing on quads in the woods in western Pennsylvania. Nasty, snotty day, cloudy, overcast. Had rained in the morning, and they had said that it was because of the morning rain that they had taken the quads out. They were looking to have some fun tearing it up in the mud, the slop and the whatever, pulling wheelies, running around in the mud with mud flying all over the place. And it was, I believe, late October or early November, and they were dressed for the cold. So they're out in these trails, and ahead of them, the one guy waves for the other guy to stop, and ahead of them, they see a Bigfoot cross the trail. Couple of steps, the typical 2 or 3 long strides up into the woods. So they looked at each other, rode down to where this just happened, looked in the direction it went. They didn't really see, per se, a trail, but the Bigfoot was gone, and they decided they were going to take a loop around some other trail they knew and try to get to where this thing was going in their mind. Now, you're not going to believe where this goes. Trust me when I tell you. They go around up this hill, And as they're coming up the hill, there is a guy leaning against a tree with a white T-shirt on, blue jeans cuffed above the ankle, smoking a cigarette, no coat, no jacket, and he's wearing white canvas boat sneakers. So these guys approach him on their quads. Now they're dressed for the cold, for the wet, for the damp, and here is this guy. They pulled up to him, like really beside themselves, like, what is this guy doing here? And they turn the quads off and they start to talk to him. Well, the guy said to me there was an overwhelming smell of like cheap hair tonic or aftershave lotion. The guy had his hair slicked back like a greaser from the 50s. And as they're watching this guy, he's smoking a cigarette, but they realize the cigarette isn't burning down. So, I mean, this is like really weird. Then they're in the mud, quads covered with mud on their boots, and he realizes there is no mud on this guy's sneakers. He's wearing pure white canvas sneakers with the rubberized side, and they said he was being very evasive about answering their questions. Like they said to him, where do you live? And he said, oh, over there. And, you know, they said, we saw a Bigfoot down there. Did you see anything come up? He was like, no, I haven't seen anything. You know, this and that. They turned to look at each other like, what the heck are we dealing with here? And when they looked back, the guy was gone. But it gets better. They turn around and come back to where they saw the Bigfoot cross the trail. When they got down there, they were sure of the spot where it had been because there was a big tree laying by the side of the trail, unmistakable that this was the spot. When they stopped and looked down, there were no tracks. So how does a Bigfoot cross a muddy path and leave no tracks having been seen walking?
Right.
And then what this appearance of this guy, strange guy, not dressed for the occasion, the weirdness of the clean clothes and no mud and the cigarette that doesn't burn and all of this stuff, then he disappears. I said to myself, this is freaking, this is from another realm. This is not normal. This is not a Bigfoot sighting, you know, on a farm where he's seen taking apples from a tree. This comes from somewhere else. The other thing is, too, you know, there's a number of encounters that I have heard of or actually penned in the books where Bigfoot have been seen coming out of or going into what you might call a portal or perhaps an entryway from another dimension into our dimension. And to me, that stuff is not alien. It is not, in my opinion, it's just in the realm of the demonic. These things ought not to be. And yet people see them and they wonder, like, what is going on here? What was that? What did I just see? You know, are you familiar with George Knapp?
Yes.
Okay, you remember the stories going back over the past, 10, 15 years about the Skinwalker Ranch?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Okay, so then if you're familiar with that, then you're probably also familiar with the sighting they had there of this tube forming over the ground and seeing some type of creature apparently crawling through this tube. Now, mind you, this tube is in the middle of the air. It's not a tunnel. It's not, you know, a kid's game that was laying there and this thing's crawling through the rubbery winding snake. This thing just simply is seen in this tube suspended in space, coming out and then running away. Now, what is that? What is that? And at the same place and in the same types of locations, you have people feeling eerie, frightened, talking about poltergeist types of things, having cameras on and actually on certain locations and certain objects where something happens to the object and yet nothing is there or on the camera.
Right.
You know, what is that? What is that? I mean, to me, that is not alien. It's not strange. It's, to me, relative to the demonic end of things. I mean, we could spend a week talking about demons and angels, but that's kind of where I go with that type of sighting or activity.
Gotcha. Yeah, see, I don't see things like that because I don't kind of subscribe to that type of a paradigm, but I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. You know, my upbringing is in the Christian faith, and you know, I look at things relative to that in a lot of different situations. You know, I mean, I think I told you the last time we were together, Seriah. I've had numerous encounters with angels in my lifetime.
Yes, yeah.
So, you know, you don't just blow that off, my friend. Yeah. No. You know, when you have encounters like that, it opens your eyes to, like, you know, where do these things come from? Why were they helping me? And are they with me all the time? I mean, these are you know, if it happens to you, are you not thinking of the same things?
I interpret it differently because I wasn't really raised with that type of a dichotomy to it.
Okay. And you know,
basically, I think the experiences are very real. I think we just all kind of label them differently.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, this is what makes human beings human beings, right? I mean, we discuss these things, and if you sat in a round table, the discussion would probably be pretty deep and very lively.
Yes. Well,
there's no doubt about it, you know.
Let's talk more about the portals, because that's something people are always interested in. What reports have you had with Bigfoot and portals?
Well, one of them, they're all very strange. The first one that I came into, there were a couple of women hiking, and my recollection is, now mind you, I don't have these accounts in front of me now, so I'm going by recall. They were hiking in a field, and two girls, and the one girl starts to realize that she was seeing something swirling in the sky. Now, she describes this swirling picture like looking through a kaleidoscope. But it was clear. It wasn't pieces of broken glass or colored glass, however they make a kaleidoscope. But what she was describing was something that had definite borders, and its borders and what was within the borders were blurry and swirling like water going down a drain. And it was in the sky, yet everything outside of its borders looked normal. So she's watching this, and then taps her friend and says, "Look over there. Do you see what I'm seeing?" So now her girlfriend chimes in that, "Yes, I'm seeing what you're seeing." And the two of them are watching this thing, trying to get a handle on how far away is it, how big is it, but they have no parameters. They don't know depth, they don't know length, they don't know height, and they're watching this thing, and it's moving. So finally this thing moves in front of a tree line that was a certain distance away from them, but they knew an estimated distance of the tree line. So now they could say to themselves, wow, this thing is like, 8 feet wide or 10 feet wide or 15 feet wide, because it's passing in front of a dark grouping of pine trees. They're watching this thing, and suddenly a Bigfoot steps out of this swirling portal, steps out and goes moving across the field away from them. And they're looking at each other like, as anyone would, like, please hold my hand and make sure I'm alive. I don't even know what to think or say or do in this moment. And yet this is what the two women both say they saw. That was the extent of their encounter. Now, here's one that's really going to blow your train off the rails. I had a guy that was on a rescue team in Alaska. And they were sent out. By the way, I don't know if you or your listeners are aware of this. I believe the statistics are 1 out of every 1,000 people or something like that in Alaska goes missing.
Wow. Yeah, I knew it was high.
Yeah, but I mean, you think 1 in 1,000?
Yeah.
That's pretty staggering.
Yeah, it is.
So, anyways. The assumption is that a lot of people go missing because they want to be missing.
Right.
And I can buy into that. You want to fall off the face of the map. All right, it's your prerogative, But a lot of these people are also deemed to go missing because they're not prepared for what they're getting into. In other words, they just go out, they're not dressed, they're not ready for the weather, they think they're Mr. Iron Man, and they find out they're Mr. Marshmallow, and they die.
Right.
But then there are other people who just go missing. So him and the party, the search party, were out looking for, I think it was a woman, allegedly went out hiking solo, over in Denali somewhere. And they got to this place where they were approaching a mountain. For some reason, they just were going in this direction, thinking this is where she probably went. Well, when they got to the mountain, they started to climb up the slope, and they heard and felt like electricity. And I always, when I hear things or when I'm writing things, I'm trying to enter in my mind's eye to the sensations and the sounds and the surrounds that are being expressed. So they're speaking about this and a crackling sound, and I'm thinking, Seriah, I'm thinking of the old Frankenstein movie when he was up in the tower and the lightning comes down and you're hearing that the crackling and it's alive, that whole thing. But they're hearing this cracking and the buzzing and humming of electricity, and suddenly they're in like a mist or a fog, and they're hearing this cracking, and they're seeing some ice coming down on the mountain, like it's being cracked loose, pieces and shards tumbling down. And what happens next is really weird, because it seems like the one guy was almost isolated from the rest of the group. He said that at some point he looked, and there was this swirling portal. And I'm taken back to the same type of visage or image that these two women were describing. This swirling portal, the energy, the crackling of what they think is electricity, this numbing feeling. And he sees a Bigfoot appear out of this thing, and it tells him, I took her. And then the situation ends, and the other hikers come over by him and say, where have you been? And he's like, well, what do you mean, where have I been? We're all here together.
Right.
And apparently this guy had somehow, in this Twilight Zone type of setting, got separated from them. Now, how they don't know and how he don't know is anyone's guess. But they're questioning him, where were you? And he's like, what do you mean, where was I? So he has the experience, and none of them do. Now, what are you to say about something like that? It's just so strange, so bizarre that I don't know what to say about that. It's not like a physical encounter. It's almost like animals speaking.
It's almost an altered state of consciousness.
Yeah, it's just very, very, very out there. And, none of these other people, when I say none of these other people, I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds of other encounters where it's definitely something that's leaving tracks, something that's breaking tree branches, something that's killing and eating, something that's creating fear, something that appears and disappears, something that's breaking into buildings. It's a physical entity traceable by scat, smell, sight, damage done, animals missing, whatever the case may be. It's a physical being as opposed to something, coming out of apparently nowhere and running away or leaving no tracks. In the case of that sighting with that weird greaser who disappears, I don't even know what to say about this kind of stuff,
Fair enough. I think there are commonalities that fly across a number of different paranormal things, and one of them is electricity. Electrical phenomena tend to follow all this stuff. So there's something to that, although what it is exactly is a little hard to put your finger on.
Well, I'll tell you something really weird. Digging into my own Catholic Christian roots a little bit. My scriptural readings say that, like, God is light and in him is no darkness at all. Now, I watch all of these ghost shows. I'm a junkie for watching all of the ghost hunters on TV. I always take note of the fact that 99.999% of the stuff they see is dark. Dark shadow, dark mist, dark figure, all of these things, And immediately I say to myself, from my standpoint, this is demonic. It's dark. If you buy into what I do, which is God is light, you see something dark, bingo. I mean, I take that jump immediately. I don't hesitate. I mean, that to me is what you're looking at. I don't think that little kids get detached and they don't know where to go when they die and I hear a little girl's voice. I think this stuff is being mimicked. And this is why I feel the same way about the Bigfoot. I mean, when you hear reports of things with glowing luminescent eyes with no apparent... I mean, the only way eyes glow, in my experience, is when a light is shown on them.
Right.
Vis-a-vis a deer. I have deer around me. As soon as the car headlights hit them, I see a yellow glow.
Right.
I mean, it's and when they turn their head, the glow is gone. It's only when the lights are reflecting, when the eyes are reflecting the light. I don't know of anything other than some squid I see because I love to fish. If I go down by Stony Brook at night right now, there's a run of squid coming in there in early fall. And if you stand there in the dark, you will see their bodies pulse like a luminescent green. They create a charge or a light within themselves when they want to, and you see this pulse in the water, and it's like, whoa, look at that. I don't know anything other than them that creates their own light. I mean,
Okay.
can you think of anything? I mean, I just can't.
There are certain plants that do as well, bioluminescent stuff.
But as far as a living being,
Yeah, no, that's the glowing red eyes is definitely a unusual sign that you're dealing with something more paranormal.
yeah, to me, and many, many, many people describe the Bigfoot encounter glowing red eyes.
Yes.
Now, I say to myself, what is with that? What is with that glowing red eyes thing that so many people across so many genres and so many lifestyles and so many areas of the country are describing glowing red eyes? It's bizarre to me. I really don't know what to say about that. But we're left to ponder it. We're left to think about it, having been told about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just one of those things where, like, okay, so Mary just told me that, and what are you going to do with it? What do you think about it? Where do you go with it? Like your show. Where did the road go, Seriah?
Exactly.
I was following the road, and now I'm
now
not too sure what.
Now we're off in new territory.
Very, very bizarre, But, excuse me. I have something here that I think you might find really interesting if you'd like me to delve into it.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, this kind of chilling account was brought to my attention by a bow hunter by the name of Shane Barkley. And this is what he had to share about what happened to him early one September morning. He said to me, as I mentioned to you when I first contacted you, Bill, this was the craziest damn thing imaginable. And if it hadn't happened to me personally, I wouldn't have believed it. I still live and hunt in Tennessee, but I haven't been back into this area that I'm about to tell you about since the day of this incident, and with good reason. Prior to September 14th of 2014, this was one of my all-time best hunting spots without exception. And on this particular day, the forecast was for clouds and drizzle in the morning with skies clearing in the afternoon. I had hiked in about a half a mile or so to a place where I always left a stand fixed in a tree. In fact, I had just replaced this stand because the old one that was there was getting rusty. That should tell you something in and of itself as to just how fond I was of this spot. The area was comprised of some of the thickest, most tightly packed forest that you will ever navigate. The bushes and trees in here, starting from the ground level and working their way up, were layered in height and density. And if not for the occasional game trail, I don't believe that anyone in their right mind would attempt coming in here, but nobody ever said that I was in my right mind. He goes on to say that I had made my way in and was already comfortably sitting in the stand at the break of dawn. My stand was fixed at a height of about 25 feet with climbing pins turned into the tree all the way up to it. And I'm going to do my best to describe to you exactly where I was sitting and what it was that I could and could not see, as well as telling you why it was that I had chosen this area for my stand in the first place. So this is where things get a little dicey. This patch of forest was what I will call a depression within a depression. The surrounding area was a valley in between a pair of hills that were around 600 feet in elevation. There was an old and well-used game trail that ran just to the left of my stand and off due north, which was directly in front of me when I was sitting in the stand. The vast majority of the brush was between 4 and 8 feet tall, which one could by no means hunt in unless you could rise above it and look down on the trail. On most days, and as was the case on this morning, this bowl was filled with a damp, foggy mist that would eventually dissipate, but not until generally 9 a.m. or later. My sight range from the seat was about 75 feet at best in all directions, and then the trees and brush seemed to vanish in the midst. He said it was a very ethereal thing to sit here alone, and it had even spooked him on more than one occasion. So here he is, he's sitting, and he says, I was sitting in the hope of my prey coming down the trail at any moment, and I began to hear what I will describe to you as being owls. There were little hoots and screeches coming in succession. It started as one and then progressed to the point where there were numerous screeches and hoots, all of which were coming from directly in front of me to my north. Being a hunter, it's virtually impossible for me to share with you in a few moments why I say what I am about to tell you. But the fact of the matter is and was that these sounds were not real. In other words, to my ear, knowing what the area's owls sound like, how they make their calls, and what time of day they make their calls, I knew these were being faked. Simply put, something or someone was mimicking these owl calls. One of the most telling aspects was the amount of calls being made and the fact that they were all in one area. Now, the imagination can play some strange tricks on one's mind, especially when you are alone in the mist in such a location. And I began to feel a sense of dread, and a cold chill ran through my body, a shiver. At that moment in time, and for the first time since I had been coming here, which must have been several dozen or more, I was wishing I had brought a gun instead of a bow. I had never felt this way before, as I just said. It was as though my psychological state was taking a terrific tumble out of control, and there was nothing I could do to control my thoughts and emotions. As if things couldn't get any worse, they did. There was so much hooting and screeching going on that it sounded like a damn war party was going on in the fog in front of me. The thought had crossed my mind to climb down out of the stand and make my way out, but that thought was countered by that of just staying put, because I would be safer sitting off the ground. My heart was racing and sweat was dripping from my brow, and I couldn't believe how frightened I was, and it was escalating. But what happened next was beyond belief. If you've never sat in or seen a folding tree stand, I was sitting on the seat portion, and my feet were resting on what I will call the floor of the stand. You could see through the entire stand and its components because it is more of a weave of steel as opposed to being a solid plate, which is done to keep it as lightweight as possible. My back was against this tree, which was maybe 16 inches in diameter, and I was some 25 feet off the ground, which means that my feet were about 20 feet off the ground. As I sat there, trembling and sweating, and by the way, having seen nothing, I suddenly felt something grab the heel of my left boot. I immediately jumped to the point of almost falling out of the stand. And as I turned my head to look down to my left, I was staring into the grimacing face of a huge Sasquatch. He was looking directly up at me, having snuck up behind me, and was reaching up with his left hand to grab hold of my boot. The very moment that I jumped, he let go and just stood there, kind of swaying and watching me. And as he stood there, the thought ran through my mind that all of the rest of the activity and noises were just a distraction, which allowed this beast to walk up on me unaware. The thought of putting a broadhead right between his eyes was just one of many thoughts that was racing through my mind. And I expected at any moment that he was going to grab the foot tray and yank the stand out of the tree to devour me. The size of this thing was unbelievable, and I don't expect you or anyone else to believe me either. He was grabbing my heel with his hand 20 feet off the ground. You can do the math as to what type of size that equates into. It was just seconds after he had held my heel that he let go. And the funny thing was that the grasp was not done with much, if any, pressure. It was as if he wanted me to know that he could do whatever he wanted, including sneaking up on me and touching me. He then turned and walked straight down the trail in front of me. And as he did so, all of the noises had stopped. The woods had suddenly and unexpectedly become deathly silent. I think he took about 10 steps to cover 75 feet and disappeared into the mist and trees. And it was at that moment that I realized I was peeing in my pants. I have no idea why, call it caused by trauma or whatever you will, but I was peeing in my pants. Now, he goes on, Seriah, to talk about having this feeling like he was on a heavy narcotic, like going into this daze or malaise before somebody gets put under for surgery. Mm-hmm. And he eventually climbed down out of the stand, and by the time he made it out to his truck, which was fairly close by, he realized that quite a few hours had gone by from the time of the actual encounter to the time he was back at his truck, and he couldn't account for the time. And I thought to myself, here we go again. He's saying he was 25 feet in the tree in this stand. Now, could he have been over-embellishing? Perhaps. Maybe he was 20 feet, and his feet were at 15 feet. I mean, it's semantics to me.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that he's a hunter, he's hunting alone, he's in a spot he had been to many times, he had just replaced his tree stand with a new one. Obviously not too afraid of creeping around alone out there. And then making the jump that he realizes these owls were not real that he was hearing.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, and he used the word mimicking. Something was trying to fake or fool the trained ear to believing these were owls, and he knew they weren't. In his heart, he knew they weren't.
Right.
And then this sucker sneaks up behind him and gently grabs a hold of his boot from ground level. I mean, can you imagine this going down when you're sitting alone in this misty, creepy game trail with your bow in your hand?
Right. It's very tricksterish.
It seems that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some other element there. To me, now you use the word trickster. I mean, when you say trickster, what are you thinking about? What are you kind of driving at with the term trickster?
Well, it's again something you see throughout the phenomena is this weird sort of trickster element. This element of almost playfulness, sometimes malicious, sometimes not.
Mm-hmm.
Some people could take it as these things are just playing with us to show us, what they can do. But it seems to be there regardless of what you're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, I'm telling you, man, if I'm in that tree stand, I don't know, man. I mean, I'm a big boy and I can shoot, man. But if I'm sitting up there with a bow, in that situation, I can't say I may have lost it and fallen right out of the tree. I mean, you don't know. I mean, people like to think, if I was in that situation, I would have done thus, and so. You have no idea what you would do.
True.
You might run and leave your mother standing there. You know what I mean? That's what might happen. That's the truth of the matter. And here's another thing. Carl Sagan once said that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's a truism. I mean, okay. If you're going to say something that kind of runs against the grain of normal thinking, well, back it up.
Right.
Prove it. And my opinion is that the threshold has already been exceeded for proof that the Bigfoot creature exists evidentially. Now, that's my opinion, and 100 other people would disagree with me entirely. And, for instance, my brother and I are talking about on the podcast a couple of weeks ago the Whitehall incident.
Mm-hmm.
And that occurred, of course, here in upstate New York back in the 70s, where those kids came running away from a supposed sighting, and the cop found them speeding, and then they went back to look. Well, the officer that came forward, apparently one said, I don't want nothing to do with it, I don't want to talk about it, never happened, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But the one officer came forward and was very vocal about what had gone down, and I think he's still talking about it today. And he said in one of the things that we read basically, and I'm paraphrasing, basically he said, there I was seeing something that is said not to exist. And that was his reality in that moment. Mm-hmm. He knows he's not insane. He knows he's alive. He knows he's a police officer. He knows he's by his car. He knows what he's seeing, and he can't. It's hard to make the step that is this actually happening to me now, and yes, by the way, it is. It's just incredible. And people are confronted with this all the time. Why didn't you take a better picture? How come the camera's always shaking? This picture's too blurry. This one's too good. This one, this fickleness. And yet the witnesses are doing their best. Listen, hey, Seriah, I had a UFO encounter here on Long Island on the South Shore.
Really?
In the middle of a beautiful blue sky day. Do you know I was standing next to my car with my wife watching this thing, and I had a camera in the glove compartment? And never did the thought come to me to go in and get the camera.
Yeah. I saw a huge UFO over Cayuga Lake here in upstate New York, and had a video camera sitting right in the back seat, and I was more focused on examining what I was seeing. And after the thing dropped down into the lake, I went, and I had a video camera in the back seat.
How do you explain that?
Well, in my case, I mean, this was back in the 90s. It was a VHS-C camera. It would have taken a few moments to get running, not like a modern camera. But I think I was more interested in observing it than documenting the observation.
Well, even like stunned or mesmerized even, right? You're just like caught up in it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I was there like, this is incredible. And I couldn't take my eyes off what I was seeing. Mm-hmm. It was appearing, disappearing, reappearing, disappearing. I saw it reflecting light off of the mile buoy out at Shinnecock Inlet. I was looking at other people who were on the beach to see if they were looking at it.
Were they?
No. I didn't see a single soul. There must have been 50 people on the beach within a couple of 100 feet of me in a few different directions. I didn't see one person point their finger at it or stand up and look at it. There were two of them. And my wife and I were like, I'll be damned. I'm looking at it. You're looking at it. Watch. Look at that thing. Look what it's doing. And I don't know if people weren't looking out of fear, or was it just that we were allowed to see it?
Right.
You follow me?
Yeah, completely.
Was this event just for an isolated audience?
Mm-hmm.
You know, do I see the Bigfoot for whatever reason, and nobody else coming down the trail that day is going to have a chance to see this thing?
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to tell you something really weird, because we can go in all kinds of directions with this, and this is kind of like the way my life goes. I work in a hospital. I'm a technician in a hospital. As you know, if you've ever been in a hospital, very clean, pristine hallways, shining floors, white walls, you know, lighting all over the place. There are no dark areas. Everything is well lit, pristinely clean. To get to my work area, we are in a large room monitoring many different areas of the hospital. And to get to my area, you come out of an elevator, you meander down a certain hallway. We go through a couple of sets of swinging doors. And as you pass through this one set of swinging doors, there's a small room on the right side. Generally, the lights are off in that room. And there is actually a little bathroom in there that me and some of my coworkers use. Mm-hmm. Now, there are other bathrooms around, more public facilities, but this one is so close to where we work that we usually just say, hey, Seriah, could you watch this for a minute? I got to go to the bathroom. And we go into this little bathroom. Well, I'm coming through this set of doors, and all of a sudden I see the back half of what appears to be a dark human body going through the door into this room. I was sure I had seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And I stepped over to the room, figuring out it was just one of my coworkers, right? But the lights were out in this room. Now, Seriah, I'm talking about a room that's like 12 by 12 with a little sink in it and this little bathroom. The lights are out. There's a window on the room. I could see outside the hospital, the parking lot. We're up 8 floors. And the light is out in the bathroom. So nobody was in there. Mm-hmm. Nobody went into the bathroom. So I told some of my coworkers about it. Like, you're not going to believe what I just saw, you know. And I'm one to raise the bar. I'm the guy who talks about Bigfoot and takes the brunt of all of the sarcasm and criticism. You know?
Right.
And so now I'm raising the bar about seeing this dark entity go in this room. Well, maybe a day or two later, one of my coworkers, myself having now breached the subject, says, Bill, by the way, I was downstairs in the adjoining building. There were like 2 towers in this hospital. She says to me, I was down on level 2, and I saw a dark gray mass go across in front of me into a room. And I was like, whoa, do tell, my dear. So she's talking about it, and everyone's listening to her now. And actually, about 3 or 4 days ago, I saw the similar thing go into the same room. So this is 3 times now that there have been individual... Now, somebody actually said to me the other day, why are you seeing it and nobody else? Which is exactly what we were just talking about.
Right.
I have no idea why I see it. I have no idea why I've encountered angels. I have no idea why I've seen UFOs, you know?
What do you make of the thing going into that room?
Well, I'll tell you, then it goes back to my own faith. Here we go back to the roundtable discussion again. I believe that because we are in a hospital setting and because there are people dying there, I mean, we regularly see people dying. It's just the way it is. Bad car wrecks, people that have lived out their life, you know.
Right.
This is a place where people expire for one reason or another. And my own opinion is that there are one of 2 things waiting there for you when you die. One of them is dark, and one of them is not. And so I think that these things are around the hospital because they're like assigned there, or they're supposed to be there. And again, in my opinion, we're dealing with this demonic realm. I think these dark figures are representing demonic entities or dark angels, if you will. I don't know how you feel about that, but you know, you asked. Remember, Seriah, you asked me.
Yeah, definitely, and that's what I wanted. Your take on it.
Yeah. No, I mean, in my mind and in my heart, I have no doubt that that is exactly what I'm seeing, and you know, it's just a bizarre thing. You know, this life, we like to think we've got it all nailed down. We have all the answers. You know, man has achieved the apex of all knowledge and this and that. In fact, you know, when I hear I love to listen to scientific minds talk about scientific things. And I love it for 2 reasons. First of all, I do admire knowledge for the sake of knowledge. I mean, I do admire people who will delve into complex issues and stick their neck out there and talk about the unknown as though it is known. But I do think there's a certain amount of horn tooting or self-aggrandizement going on there by the same people. Kind of like, you know, look at me. Look at what I've achieved. Look at what I've known. You know, I'm teaching you, don't you know? And so I listened for really a couple of different reasons, but I kind of got sidetracked and I don't know where I was going. Anyways, it's that way. It's that way. Why do we have to think that we have all the answers?
Mm-hmm. Oh, we definitely don't have all the answers.
Yeah. Well, why is this feeling like, I know this and you don't, Why don't you step up to my side and get educated, I look at the Bigfoot phenomenon like, this is an amazing thing. This is remarkable. And it doesn't require anybody to tutor me into the how and why I'm so wrong about believing this creature is real and believing that these people are having a real interaction with something. Why do I have to be wrong and you're right about thinking I'm some type of loon, and all of these people who say they're encountering something are loons as well?
Right.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. Now, I got something here. I think you'd like to... I'm going to read this to you.
Okay.
Now, there is no... You're going to hear here, there is no Bigfoot sighting. This is what I would call circumstantial evidence, and I defy anybody to tell me or to contact me what they think may have happened to bring about this situation. Now, I'm just going to read this to you. It's kind of brief.
Okay.
And when we're done, give me your take.
All right.
So as I begin this with you, well, I don't even have to read that. This was told to me by Wayne Enright, and this is what they had to say. By the way, I will tell you what I had at the beginning, because I had written that this account had occurred very near to an area, only a few miles away, from where a couple of other guys were attacked in their tent in another story, but 5 years apart.
Okay.
So Wayne said it was getting late in the summer of 2003 when my friend and hunting partner Jerry and I were going to spend a Saturday scoping out a location to place our tree stands for the upcoming fall hunt. So here we had a couple of more bow hunters. Our destination was northwest of Raymond, between Willow Creek, St. Vrain Creek, and Finch Lake. I believe this is in Washington. Having hunted here before and done well, our hope was that this season would yield more of the same. Now, once again, Seriah, as I get going here, I always say that people see things who are out there looking for things. So many people are engaged in doing things that normal people don't do, spending time in places that most people will never go, and they're the people, for the most part, that are having encounters. So he says, our custom net was we would find several locations that seemed promising, and after we returned home, we would then decide on the exact spot to set up a week or so before the season began. Our day yielded some very promising locations. Yet, as fate would have it, on the return leg of our hike, we had decided to take somewhat of a last-minute detour for a look at another area. The forest was thick in here, and there were a number of heavily trafficked trails. As we followed one of them, it opened up into a small clearing within the trees. The two of us realized in the moment that this was really the best of the bunch, so to speak. We began to work the perimeter of the clearing, scoping out the best locations to position our stands. And then we decided to divide and conquer. Jerry went in one direction while I went in another, saying to each other that we would give a shout if we found anything good. It was about 20 minutes later when I heard Jerry shouting at the top of his lungs, "Hey, Wayne, you better get over here quick." As I ran into the clearing, Jerry was standing directly in front of me on the other side, waving his hand at me. I ran across to meet him as he said to me, "Prepare yourself. I found a body. I followed his lead as we meandered through some thick brush, following a game trail. And as we rounded a corner, Jerry stopped and extended his arm, pointing. I couldn't believe my eyes. In front of us was a large old pine, the lower branches of which had long since died, being completely devoid of any green growth whatsoever. Draped over one of the lower branches, with a large dead stump of a limb protruding from her chest, was a female body missing one limb and quite obviously dead. As I stood there looking at the corpse, the first thought that had entered my mind for whatever reason was that of Vlad the Impaler from Transylvania, who marked a trail leading up to his castle with his victims' bodies impaled on pointed stakes for his potential adversaries to peruse. This limb upon which the body was draped was at eye level, which to me said that no human had done this. There was nothing to stand on and no reason, at least in my own mind, why someone would not only kill a person, but then go to such an extreme to create this gory display that we were now viewing. We knew it was a woman, because her long black braid was hanging off the back of her head, as her head slumped rearward towards the ground. The two of us noticed that the head appeared to be on the verge of falling off, with the neck giving the appearance of having been twisted or mangled in some way. Her right leg was still attached to the body, while the left leg was completely missing, from the hip socket down. On her right foot, there was an expensive running shoe, which said to us that she had been jogging, and whatever she had been wearing in her lower body was removed. There was virtually very little remains of blood on the ground, and the body, in our estimation, had not been there long, with the reason for my saying that being the lack of decay. The expression on her face seemed to be that of horror, which had been frozen in time upon her death. She was wearing a tight lycra-type shirt underneath which we could see what I would say was a sports bra. The chest was completely collapsed, and we could see what must have been segments of broken ribs protruding up through the shirt with bloodstains surrounding them. The amount of trauma and physical damage that this corpse had been put through was self-evident, even to our untrained eyes. It was then that Jerry said to me, "There ain't no way, no how, that we are coming back here to hunt. This place is cursed. I don't even want to stand here anymore." I couldn't have agreed with him more, as a kind of eerie chill began to consume my very being. It was then that Jerry said what I was already thinking. No dude did this to her. This was the result of a violent Sasquatch attack. There is no way a man could have or would have hung her up there like that, like she was a trophy being displayed. There was no evidence of any insects on the body, not a single scratch or claw mark on the remaining flesh or garments. Obviously, after having made our way out, we reported our findings as well as the location to the authorities, and that was the end of it. And he went on to say that him and his buddy passed on hunting that year because of what they had encountered.
Is there any follow-up for what the police found?
No. I just take the accounts as the people give them to me, and I try to put them together. Mind you, I'm getting contacted all the time, Seriah.
Right.
I just had a guy lay an account on me that I'm trying to get in touch with now. I'm sure I will. It all just takes a little time. I probably spent the better part of 2 hours on the phone with a fellow the other day that was telling me of two encounters that happened in the same area, upstate New York, near Lake Superior. One when he was a Boy Scout with an entire troop, and another one when he was 19 in the same area. I think he was 13 and then 19 when the second one happened. On the other side of the same lake 6 years later. So, they're really, now you may say it's irresponsible or whatever. there's no way for me to get into all of the details. And to be honest with you, a lot of the people really don't want to talk. I've had people that have sent me glimpses and glimmers of things, and they don't respond to me when I get back to them.
Right.
I don't know what that's all about. Are they full of beans?
Did you say New York and Lake Superior? Because Lake Superior is up further.
No, up by the Erie Canal.
Oh, okay. So by Lake Erie.
Yeah, I'm saying Lake Superior. He mentioned the Erie Canal, and he was, I want to say he was about an hour ride south of Lockport.
Okay.
And I asked him why the town was called Lockport, and he said that a lot of the towns along the Erie Canal were named after like a port, something port.
Yeah.
And Lockport. I really have no knowledge of the area that he was talking about. I've never been there.
It's up by Buffalo.
Yeah, Buffalo. He mentioned Buffalo.
Yeah.
So, but that was it. So it must have been Lake Erie. But anyways, his encounters happened by a man-made lake. He mentioned 2 lakes to me up there that were man-made. If you told me the name, I would know it, but it's not coming to me right now. At any rate, I mean, he is another guy. He mentions having this encounter. It was nothing crazy. More or less a sighting, kids laughing about it, the scoutmaster kind of taking the brunt of it, one kid having seen something more than the other kids saw and being kind of shy about it. And, you know, they're kids, 13 years old, late 60s. You know, what do they know about Bigfoot, you know?
Right.
And the scoutmaster thinks he saw a bear. He second guesses himself later on, talking to his friend that, you know, what color are black bears? Are they all black? And, you know, he had described that the back of this thing turning away, it was on 2 legs, walking, and the back appeared to be red. So, who knows, you know?
Yeah.
And then the other little kid, this guy's friend at the time, who he said was kind of like a shy, coyish kid, came to him later on and said that he saw the thing's butt crack. Can you believe that?
Huh. That's not something you hear much.
You know, from a kid. You know, he saw its butt, furry covered butt. So that's kind of weird, you know, and that was pretty much the evidence. What the scoutmaster saw, then what his friend kind of fessed up about seeing, and this guy said he had saw the head go up and down in like some briar or bramble. So the 3 of them each got a little bit of a different glimpse of the same thing, you know?
Yeah. All right.
So everything's not, you know, bold face, you know, a fantastic story to behold. I mean, heck, if I saw one of these things ducking off the shoulder of the road into the woods, I would consider that an outstanding encounter.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
You know, I mean, everything's not these developed stories or happening over times or multiple evidentiary proofs of the same thing being around a property, you know, which does happen.
Yeah. Do you have another short one you could get into?
Well, let me see here. You know, none of these are really like, they're not like 5-minute encounters, you know.
Right.
But this is kind of interesting. You know, when we talk about where are the bodies, which we've heard a million times, right? Mm-hmm. Where are the bodies? Well, if you believe this, and I do, and if you believe many of the other encounters, which I've heard about and which I have in my own possession and which other people have spoken about openly, I think bodies have been found numerous times. Where they go, where are they, I have no idea. But this is really interesting. This was a Mexican-American couple, Wilfredo and Helena Gomez. They were traveling on the interstate in Massachusetts at the time of this incident, and I think you'll be blown away by what it is they say that they came across. We'll begin with what Wilfredo said, and then I'll tell you when Helena actually starts talking. My wife and I were returning home on the interstate one night, December 2009. In the distance, as we were coming up a grade, we saw a semi on the shoulder with its flashers on. As we got closer, there was quite a bit of blood on the pavement and some pieces of debris from the truck, like broken lenses and a mirror laying in the road. We were driving quite slowly as we were approaching the truck and had noticed something on the shoulder, which we believed to be a bear or a moose. Suffice to say, it was something very large, and it appeared that it had collided with the truck up ahead. We pulled up to the truck and got out. Walking over to the cab, we saw the driver was still inside. I grabbed the side rail and jumped up on the fuel tank to check on him. He was sitting in the seat with his head in his hands, still behind the wheel of the truck. I tapped on the window and asked him if he was all right. It took him a few seconds to respond, and he rolled down the window. I could see that he was in shock, and he didn't answer right away. About a minute later, while I was telling my wife to call the police, he said to me, "I just crashed into a Bigfoot that was running across the road back there chasing a doe." I said to him, "You hit a what?" He repeated, saying that he had just demolished the front of his truck, hitting a Bigfoot that was crossing the highway. I climbed down from the cab and walked to the front of the truck. The lights were still on, and the entire grille, front bumper, and hood was buckled inward. The left front fender and headlamp were demolished, and the truck was leaking water from what appeared to be the radiator. It was about 10 minutes later when a trooper came roaring down the highway, and an ambulance soon followed. At this time, the driver still had not come out of the cab. He was sitting there in silence and holding his head in his hands. As the officer drove up, we told him briefly what we knew, and he jumped up to talk to the man. Moments later, a second ambulance came to the scene, as well as another officer. The driver was now out of the truck and talking. About 300 feet behind the truck, the animal was on the side of the road. My wife, Helena, stayed by our car while I and one of the officers started to walk back to it. He had his gun drawn and told me to stay behind. He said if the animal was still alive, it may jump up and try to hurt us. The trooper had a powerful flashlight with an expandable beam. I was walking maybe 15 feet behind him as we approached the animal. As soon as his light hit it, I saw the blackened face of a gorilla type of beast with blood pouring from its mouth. I actually saw one of its eyes blink and its hand move slightly. I knew immediately that this was no moose or anything else that is known to be in these woods. It was exactly as the driver had said. He had crashed into a Bigfoot with his truck. The officer told me to go back and stand by the truck, and as soon as I had reached it, he fired 3 rounds at point-blank range into the creature to put him down. A few minutes later, he took a report from us as to what the driver had told us, and we overheard as well what the driver was saying to the ambulance crew and the other officer. He said that he was fairly certain he was going to hit the deer and was trying all evasive measures in a short period of time not to do so, saying that the trailer brakes had locked up and the trailer began to swing wide when all of a sudden the Bigfoot was now squarely in front of the truck and unavoidable. He said when he hit the beast, he wasn't wearing his seatbelt, and the impact caused him to fly forward, smashing the windshield with his forehead, which explained to me why he was sitting there in a daze holding his head. As we were leaving, the ambulance crew was putting the man in the back of their vehicle. Helena and I took off. Now, this is briefly what his wife had to say, kind of in closing. I was asking Wilfredo what he had seen, because I had stayed in the car. I saw the officer fire the shots and had only heard the conversations. Wilfredo told me it was a Bigfoot and it was still alive, but was badly bleeding, which is why the officer decided to put it down. I said to Wilfredo that I couldn't wait to hear what the news would have to say about it the following day, but when the morning had come, there was nothing. We sat by the TV all day, waiting and waiting, and nothing was said. The next day, Wilfredo actually called the local news station and inquired about not hearing the story. They had said they knew nothing about any such story and asked Wilfredo what he had seen. He must have spent 30 minutes on the phone with them, recounting the entire story, and the next day, again, nothing was heard or said on the news, and nothing was in the local papers the entire week. We both knew what we had seen and heard, and yet not a word was spoken about it. We thought surely there would be great interest in such a story, but it was never told.
Interesting. And where did that take place?
Massachusetts.
Wow, really? Massachusetts.
So, what do you say about that?
Yeah.
I look at everything for face value. To me, I'm like a conduit. I've been on the phone with, I don't know how many people, and let's just say the past few weeks. I spend hours on the phone with people, hearing their stories, trying to take down details, questioning them about this and that, what was over here, what was there. And, I hang up the phone and I'm just like, wow, that was bizarre. I have a book, chapter 1 in volume 1. The first story I wrote was called The Michigan Upper Peninsula Encounter. Do you know I spent a couple of hours on the phone with a woman who got in touch with me having listened to the podcast? She lives right below in the Michigan Upper Peninsula where these dudes had this encounter.
Oh, wow.
And it was a violent, multifaceted encounter over a couple of days in the woods. And she knew nothing about that encounter. She hadn't read it. She hadn't heard about it.
Huh.
She and her family owned several large parcels of land up there, which is like no man's land. And she confirmed that to me again with her conversation, like, Bill, there ain't nobody over there. And they had land that they used to go up to, and they'd tell each other, hey, we're going up this week or whatever. And she had an encounter over there. It wasn't particularly violent. This thing was running, keeping pace with her car in the dirt road. And, the howling in the woods, there were other facets to it. But what do you say? Things start to match up after a while,
Yeah. And where can people submit stories to you?
Well, I always announce it on the podcast, Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters podcast. We tell people to go to our webpage and hit the contact link. The webpage is BigfootTerrorinthewoods.com, all one word.
Okay.
There's a contact link on there. And in my books, I leave my web address. And I say to people, if you've seen something, say something. So I encourage people to tag along on the podcast and take a look at my books. If you go to buybigfootbooks.com, there are links there to all of my books. They're mostly on Amazon, and now the audios are on Audible and iTunes and Amazon.
Nice.
There's a bunch of places you can get a hold of me,
And how many books do you have now? How many volumes in this series?
Well, there's 7 out, and 8 is being edited right now.
Wow.
And I'm actually working on 9. And 6, 5, 4, and 3 are in audio format right now, and 2 will probably be up in another 2 months or so.
All right, cool. Well,
but it's a constant effort, Seriah.
Oh, I'm
constant
sure.
Effort.
And thank you for spending some time with us. It was a very interesting conversation.
Seriah, it is my pleasure, and hopefully we'll do it again down the road, my friend.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for having me.
Our patrons help make this show possible, and I'd like to send an extra special thanks to all patrons pledging $10 or more. Allison Cook, Eric Hervin, Lindsay Marie Trebet, Super Inframan, Tim, Alex Whitcomb, Nadine, Demian Tallman, Edu Camahort, Janet Bunderson, 36 Dingo, Maria, Nate Seriah, Rob Drummond, Jennifer Campbell, Mike McGuire, American Rambler, Paul Buscini, Kevin, John Rutledge Foster, Eric Citron, Andy McNamara, Sasha Jorg, Matthias Sumby, Christopher Vaughn, Riker and Stark, Sean Cosgrove, Jose A., Roger Gonzalez, Craig Cicernos, Ray Benedetto, Lindsey Jackson K., Alfred Tuttle, Kevin Schreck, Patricia Gaia-Quinta, William Lovelace, Mark Brady, Chris is a hot dog a sandwich, John Eddy, and Carla Mahoney. Thank you all so very much. You help make this show possible. All right, I did do an extra Patreon segment with Bill there, where he tells one more Bigfoot story, so Patreons can look forward to that later in the week. And again, if you have any stories to submit, weird things that have happened to you, stories at wheredidtheroadgo.com is the place to send them. We'll be doing more listener stories soon, and I'll see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.